So, it's nice to meet you. Hi, I'm
you.
Peter Canavesi from Groucho Reviews, and I'm here with Tab Hunter, star of stage and screen.
Well, that was my past life.
Yeah.
Until Alan forced me to do the documentary.
Right, well now you're a star of screen again. Most people probably know you from your teen idol years, when you were both a film star and also a pop recording star, a #1 hit. But you're also an accomplished actor. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about your learning curve. You learned on the job.
That's very true.
With people like Marilyn Erskine and Jeff Corey kind of helping you to build your craft.
Well, you know, it was very funny because when you're just thrown into it and you're product of Hollywood, where do you serve your apprenticeship? It's really difficult. And I admired a lot of the actors coming up from New York and having that wonderful stage experience. You know, I could barely read my new name off a piece of paper. And after I did a few films, I was dedicated, but not really totally engrossed in learning the craft until I wanted one role specifically in Battle Cry, because it reminded me so of my brother. And I read the book, Leon Uris's first novel, and I took about 20 pages of notes on it, and I thought, I really would love to play that role, because it reminds me of my brother. So I did 9 tests for it, and I kept working and working, and that was the first real move toward developing as an actor.
So your first loves were horses and Hollywood, right?
Well, I would not say Hollywood, but I would definitely say horses. They're still a big love of mine. In fact, that was my touch of reality, the horses. They were my touch of reality in that unrealistic world of Hollywood. So I was rather insecure, and it was not my comfort zone, so every free minute I would run out to the barn, and I always say I felt closest to God with a pitchfork full of you-know-what in my hands out of the barn.
Right.
It was very important.
Keeps you grounded.
Well, very grounded.
Yeah.
In fact, recently my mare just foaled on April the 7th, so I've become a father.
So your love of horses actually led you to your career in Hollywood, right? Can you talk about?
Actually, it did.
Discovered by?
I was discovered by a wonderful friend of mine, a man by the name of Dick Clayton. He was an actor who later turned agent. He was the agent for Jimmy Dean, Jane Fonda, Burt Reynolds. I mean, just go on and on. Angie Dickinson. Everyone wanted Dick Clayton to handle him. And he was really, truly an incredible human being, and we have him in the documentary. He was part of my family.
Dick introduced you to your first agent.
Yes.
Dick became your long-running trustee agent.
Trustee, and there are very few you can trust.
Right. And he introduced you to your first agent, Henry Wilson.
Yes.
And in reading your book and in watching the film, it seems like those two guys are sort of like the best and worst of what
the other.
In some ways. I mean, Henry Wilson did so much for your career, but on the other hand, he was also he crossed the line of personal and professional.
Well, yes and no. He did so much for my career, because he was the type of agent say, well, so and so won't work out. I have so and so, so and so, so and so, so and so. I mean, he was supportive, but wherever the wind would blow.
Right.
He was a good agent, but I always say he was like a gay Svengali. You know what I mean? He was an interesting man who was well respected in the industry. I mean, well respected.
And very connected.
Oh, yeah. Very connected. You know, Selznick, I mean, we started out there, yes.
Yeah. You know, in recent years, people have kind of made hay and some seriously and some jokingly have referred to the gay mafia in Hollywood, you know, a sort of connected group of gay people in Hollywood. And I wonder, at that time, was there sort of a feeling that those who were gay would look out for each other in Hollywood?
The word gay wasn't around then.
Right.
And whenever I'd hear it, I would just turn the other direction or walk away or something like that, because I just couldn't confront any of that, because it just, I knew that if anything got out about me personally, it might ruin my career. I mean, and I wanted to work as an actor. You can't be a leading man in Hollywood even today and still have, you know, someone questioning your sexuality.
Were you more comfortable ultimately on screen or on the stage, do you think? Which was easier for you in practicing the craft?
At first, on theater was very difficult, but I loved it so much. Because when you do a movie, you can say, oh, can we cut? Can we do that again? And if you're doing a play, you say, thank God, there's tomorrow night's performance, because tonight really didn't cut it. But live television was the most difficult because of the immediacy of it. It happened then, and that was it. The one shot, so you better be with it. So that was very difficult.
How would those directors like Frankenheimer and I guess you did one with Lumet on?
I did a couple of things. I think 3 with Sydney.
Yeah, how did those types of directors prepare their actors for live TV? Because it is, like you say, it's sort of that hybrid of theater and film.
Well, they first of all, we rehearsed in a taped out studio in New York usually. Did some in Hollywood too. But they did it like a Broadway production. You rehearsed it for a while before you ever set foot in front of a camera. And those people were so well respected. I mean, they were the backbone of the industry. They had served their apprenticeship through live TV. And live TV to me was the most gratifying, but certainly the most difficult.
Yeah.
They were great directors.
Yeah. You sort of dabbled in musical acting before doing Damn Yankees, and then you scored that big film. And of course, you talk about in the book and in the film how George Abbott was very difficult, wanting to just photocopy the Broadway production. But I wonder, putting that aside, what was it like for you developing as a musical performer and as a dancer with Bob Fosse?
Fosse was brilliant. I had cut the record for Dot.
Right. Yeah.
Warner Brothers didn't have a recording company.
Young Love was the first.
That's correct. Yeah. And it was just boom, an overnight smash, and it became #1 song in the country. And then I had to realize, where am I going to sing in front of a group? I'd be scared to death. So the first time I ever had to was on the Perry Como show, and I did it. I was a nervous wreck, and Perry came out afterwards and said, "No, that wasn't so bad." He was so cool. And that was really terrific. And then I started doing more and more of them. Dinah Shore, Jimmy Durante, Pat Boone, all of the variety shows that we used to have. And little by little, those wonderful performers would help you become more and more relaxed.
Right.
So I did become more relaxed then.
Going back to the start of your career for a moment, you were dubbed by Henry Wilson Tab Hunter. That's your stage name or your screen name. In real life, do you go by Art with your friends and at home, or are you Tab?
That's interesting. Most people call me Tab, and I really feel funny if people that never knew me as Art call me Art. There are some people that do, but very few. The people that knew me as Art, fine, but I just think it's like stepping into it. Hey, Art, how you doing? It's just a little like chalk on a blackboard.
Yeah, you've learned to embrace the name.
Well, now Tab Hunter said pay to the order. I got used to it.
Yeah. The star on the street. Yeah. So I wonder, was there a kind of camaraderie among you guys who were kind of stamped out with those names at the time, or was there a competition?
I didn't really know many of Henry's clients. I didn't know Guy Madison. I barely knew Rory and his wife.
Rory Cohen.
Yeah, I knew Rock because he was a neighbor in Beverly Hills, but I never really had a great relationship with a lot of them. Not really.
Yeah.
I would do my job. I was trying to develop as an actor once I realized what it was all about, and it's not an easy business.
Right. What was the hardest part of the business for you, since you mentioned it?
Probably being in the public eye. I mean, I could fake it, but it wasn't my comfort zone.
Yeah. You talk about in the book, and of course in the film, it's covered as well, the sort of scandals that touched on your career. And the irony, of course, being that the confidential scandal that mentioned your having been arrested at a gay party, which of course is absurd today.
It was just ridiculous when you really stop to think of it.
Yeah.
Here I am, a kid right out of the Coast Guard for being underage. They threw me out. My friend Terry said, "Let's go by this party. I hear, it's going to be fun, drink and blah, blah, blah." I said, "Oh, great." And as a kid, I went along about a bunch of guys dancing, a bunch of women dancing. Yeah. I walked in the refrigerator, opened it up, and pulled out something to eat, and the cops raided it, and they called it a pajama party and all this nonsense. Right. Total BS.
Yeah. And of course, the irony was, really, that didn't put a dent in your career at all.
Well, I was very worried when the Confidential magazine came out, and I thought, "Oh my gosh, there goes my career."
Yeah.
But then Dick Clayton was wonderful. He said, a lot of people are having the same thing out. I mean, Tab, look at this. Marilyn Monroe's on the cover, so-and-so's on the cover, so-and-so's on the cover. You know, just go out and do your job the best you possibly can. And people believe what they want to believe.
Right.
2 weeks later, I won the Audience Award as the most popular newcomer in the country.
Right. Yeah. And
go figure.
Yeah.
You know?
And I know your mother used to say, the masses are asses.
That's a great one. I'm so glad you picked that up, because she did.
In that case, when you got the Audience Award, they were on your side, but then the irony was there was that trumped up animal abuse thing that turned out to be more damaging to your career than...
Which was terrible. It's like Lyndon Johnson picking his dog up by the ears, and everybody screamed about that.
Right.
You know, my animals are such an important part of my life.
Obviously, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah.
No kidding. But you know, people want to believe what they want to believe, and nobody is ever looking for the good. They're always looking for the negative. And I try to push that out of my mind because I was brought up that way.
Yeah.
I had a very strong mother, and I love that you brought up the master ass. She was quite something. She was quite an amazing woman.
Right.
I've got to tell you one thing about her that I love.
Yeah.
The studio was interviewing my mother one time. She only did one interview the whole time I was at Warner Brothers. And they said, "Mrs. Galeen, aren't you proud of your son?" And my mother said, "Yes, that's nice, but Walter's the intelligent one." I loved it.
Later, in around the early 80s, I guess it was 1980, 1981, John Waters called you up for Polyester. And you know, this was sort of ahead of the curve, right? And now it's sort of de rigueur to have, yours was the prototype of a comeback, a Hollywood comeback that was hit, right?
John was wonderful. He called. I was doing a play in Indianapolis, and he called me. He said, "This is John Waters, and I don't know if you know me." And I said, "John, I'm a major fan of yours. You know, love Mundo Trasho."
Yeah.
And he said, "I've got a script I'd like you to read about, you know, doing a role in it with Divine.
Yeah.
How would you feel about kissing a 350-pound transvestite?" I said, "Well, I'm sure I've kissed a heck of a lot worse in my life."
Right.
But I read the script, and I liked John so much, and I was such a fan of Divine's, I accepted it, and it was a great shot in the arm for my career.
Yeah. Looking back, in hindsight, it almost seems like a de facto step towards being open as a gay man, too, given the camp nature and you know, as you say, kissing a 300-pound transvestite.
That's a good point. It probably was, along with my friend Alan saying, you know, you've got to write this book because, you know, I heard someone was going to be writing a book on you, and I thought, you know, when people are dead, people write all kinds of crap about people, and I thought, get it from the horse's mouth and not from some horse's ass after I'm dead and gone.
Yeah.
This was my journey, you know, hopefully I'm learning something from it, and, you know, please accept it the way I present it.
Right, yeah, and it's a really amazing story. It's so many famous people that you ran into their paths, including your sort of first movie crush, Tyrone Power, and, and all the way to Lula Bankhead and Flipper. You met them all. You met them all.
Quite a few, from Flipper to Lula Bankhead. That's quite a stretch.
So, and then also you had a competitive figure skating stint.
I did skate for a few years. I skated when I lived up here in the city, and then I skated again when I was in Los Angeles for a while. But competitive skating was only your own accomplishment. Mm-hmm. And I gave that up and went back to the horses because you're working with an animal that has a life of its own. Mm-hmm. And I loved the showing of the horses and riding and being out with them every day. Yeah. In fact, I showed at the Cow Palace every year, the big shows there, the whole circuit on the West Coast.
Yeah. I'm sure it's true for every person, but maybe especially for somebody who's in the public eye and propelling a Hollywood career and all of that. But it must have seemed like a whirlwind while it was happening. And I wonder, were you able to think of the future? Was it possible to plan for the future as it was happening?
It was difficult. I was trying to accept things as they were happening and trying to adjust to it as best I possibly could, because it was a very difficult move being thrown in with a brand new name and a starring role in a film. Where do you serve your apprenticeship? It was very difficult. Yeah,
and it must have been an added difficulty to your personal life because of the way things were culturally and not being able to be open, but to think of a future with another person as well.
I never thought about my future with another person. When I met Alan Glasser, it was a whole different ballgame because he's just been really incredible for my life. But I'm basically a pretty introverted person in a lot of things. You know, I do my job as best I can, but beyond that, it's not my comfort zone.
And you've been with Alan for
30-some years,
right? Yeah. Settled down. Was that something that you couldn't really ever probably dream of that until it happened to you? Huh? I mean, like when you're in a relationship for a number of years with somebody like, say, Tony Perkins, you must have had to take it kind of day by day and not really have any expectation of.
I think when you're a young man or woman, you do live moment to moment, and you feel that you're bulletproof, and you live in a certain area, and then you hopefully elevate your thinking more and more as you get older, hopefully.
Yeah. Back in those years when the cameras, as they are today, were everywhere, and you would go out on dates, they were sort of, it was sort of like putting on a show in one sense, while also having, you know, a personal experience, right? You would be on a kind of double date.
I would go out on dates because I wanted to go out on dates. If the studio wanted me to take an actress like a young starlet out to a premiere, of course. They're going to send a limousine for you, you're going to do this, you're going to be photographed, you're going to do. So you do it because that's part of your job.
Yeah.
And if you don't do your job, you're out and someone else is in there.
Yeah.
So do it to the best of your ability. But a lot of times, you know, magazines had to run everything through the publicity department.
Right.
And they were huge wings at the studio, at least Warner Brothers.
Right.
So if they would say, we'd like to do a photographic layout of you doing so-and-so, I'd say, I'd rather take Venetia out to the barn. I think that'd be more interesting. It's a little more real, because I go there all the time, and I've been teaching Venetia how to ride.
Yeah.
You know, they'd, oh, that's a good idea. So then they'd photograph that.
Much better than you washing a window. You know?
Or putting on a hat.
Right. And you became, of course, great friends with so many of those women who you would appear to be dating to the public, but you were just great friends with them, like Debbie Reynolds as well, Venetia.
Well, Venetia, you know, I'm very close, and her sister Caroline, and her daughter is my godchild. I mean, we're very close because of the horses in our wonderful relationship.
So when you were back in the Coast Guard, I heard you had a nickname of Hollywood because you would go to the movies. You've always been a film lover, right?
I love films. I just love the escapism of film. I mean, all those great films, you know, The Black Swan, Blood in the Sand, all those. Just
Cloak and Dagger.
All those, Cloak and Dagger. I was an usher in the theater when that was playing. Yes, I loved all of that, and it was escapism. And when I was in the Coast Guard, I remember a couple of guys say, let's go out to a bar, and I thought, bar? I'm going to the movies. They said, you're always going to the movies, so they called me Hollywood.
So I wonder, today, do you keep up with the movies? What kind of movies do you watch today or enjoy today?
I watch very few movies. The Academy sends me screeners, and when I hear from a good producer friend of mine, Michael Dealey, who produced Blade Runner and some big pictures, he says, I think this is worth watching, so I will watch the better ones and then make my decisions on voting. But I really enjoy the better films. But, I'm disappointed that studios today are these large corporations spending gazillion dollars on films that just don't interest, certainly me, and I don't know about the other people. They make a lot of money, but I like the simple pictures that really have a message and mean something.
Yeah, and an emotional intimacy. Yeah,
I think that's important.
Yeah. One of the things that most surprised me reading the book was that you'd had a heart attack at one point and a stroke at another point, because here you are, you're a survivor.
You forgot my quadruple bypass.
Your image has always been so hale and hearty. So how are you feeling now? And you seem like you're just in great shape.
Every day is a thank you day.
Yeah.
And you can't forget it.
Yeah.
It's very important.
How do you stay in shape now? Riding, I imagine?
Well, I gave up riding this year because my balance wasn't quite as... I noticed when I was at the Upperville Horse Show in Virginia the last year, I thought my balance isn't quite what it should be. So I gave it up. I'm still around the horses, of course. But I take the dogs to the beach. Alan and I and our friend Annie, we take the dogs down for a walk in the morning. Then we work out at the Y 3 mornings a week, a little bit, only 20 minutes, not too much. And then I go to the barn and do my work at the barn, and it's enough.
Still working for you, yeah. Let's see. Maybe you could tell me about some of the other directors you worked with, like Wild Bill Wellman.
He was terrific. Bill Wellman was old school. He was terrific. He was very upset with Jack Warner when we did Lafayette Escudero because he changed the whole picture. And Jack Warner did.
Yeah.
Wellman,
ending, yeah.
They used to call him Wild Bill Wellman.
Yeah.
He did some great films, and you really trusted directors like that. You really, they had an energy that you need, that actors need. Otherwise, you can become rather complacent.
And it'd give you a confidence too that they knew what they were doing.
Tremendous confidence.
Yeah.
And Bill Wellman was one of my favorites. Also, a man who was totally been overlooked by the name of Phil Carlson.
Oh, right.
I loved working for Phil in Gunman's Walk. He was an incredible director.
Yeah. Which are the films that you'd most like to see get a revival, that you wish people would go to first?
Whatever they want to see. Damn Yankees is fun because it's a guileless kind of a story. It's wonderful. I like it very much. And Gunman's Walk was my first heavy in a film.
Yeah.
I'd done a lot on live television, but
Right.
it took live TV to get Hollywood to do let me play other roles.
Yeah.
I would say Gunman's Walk with Van Heflin. I love doing that. I prepared for that with Jeff Corey, who was such a great coach.
Yeah.
And that kind of woman, of course, is Sophia. I mean, you got Sophia, come on, how could you not want to do that with Sidney directing?
Right, yeah. I guess we'll close out by asking, looking back at the arc of your life, it's been a journey of self-discovery, as with any person. When did you first feel that you'd come to terms with being gay for yourself, not publicly but privately?
I've never really felt comfortable discussing it or any of that, but I just accept it as best I can in today's market, which is very out there.
Right.
But I don't flaunt anything. I don't care to. That's not the way I was brought up.
Right.
I'm a little old-fashioned. I'm a wonderful, strict German mother who was very religious.
Yeah. Well, I hope everything goes great with the film, with Tab Hunter Confidential, the film.
We're thrilled with the response has been amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Thank you very much for talking with me. It's been great.
Thank you.